Mike. Welcome back to another episode. We missed out last week for personal reasons, but the Gundam train never stops.
Nope. That it doesn't.
So, what are you doing before we start today's episode?
I'm getting a chance to play Gundam Breakers for the PC, which is a great game, besides the story.
Except for the fact that there's no real life Gundams in outer space. It's practically a Toy Story Gundam edition, but okay. Moving on, Michael. Tell us.
I don't know what's more disappointing to me. The fact that she fused a Gundam wing with the God Gundam, or the fact that she didn't fuse it with a more powerful being type Gundam.
Right. All right, Mike. Tell us about original Gundam. We covered the bios the week prior. We did all of the cool shenanigans, but tell us first. Tell us about Gundam. What is the Gundam? The last bio we missed.
All right. So first, if we're gonna start from the start, we got to start from the start. Last time we talked about Origin, we pretty much left it off as in the RX-78-2, also known as the original Gundam, was produced. Technically, it wasn't just produced; it was also mass-produced. We, from that, eventually got a ground version of the RX-78 that was supposed to be made with a cheaper version of Gundamian and was meant to be mass-produced.
Right.
We would see those appear all over the Earth colonies and actual Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of the Federation's main forces, eventually it would be replaced by the much cheaper and more usable GMs, Model 2, 3, and 4, which, you'll see through the entire Gundam series.
Right, of course,
but,
of course.
But I will go deeper into the multiple different versions of Gundam RX-78 during the OVAs, where you get to see more of them.
Right.
You will also get to see more variations of the Zaku and other Gundams, another Gundam mobile suits that you normally don't get to see in the series altogether. But let's start with this. The RX-78 was pretty much a thick boy. It was meant to be not only a very powerful armor, but was also meant to have the mobility of pretty much even higher than the Zaku, which at the time was the highest mobility suit in the entire armada.
Right.
There was talks during the war when they saw the Zaku that the only way they could win the war was if they stole one and mass-produced it in their own. But they tried, but didn't really work out as well. But they didn't even have to, thanks to the fact that they had someone on their side now producing a prototype that would become the Gundam. The Gundam's frame was meant to solve much of the problems from the other mobile suits, working a lot like the Zaku frames at the time, giving it high mobility in space and Earth, while also making it dainty enough to be able to sport and move and attack in ways that resemble human likeness. Not to mention that, it was a thick boy, thanks to the Gundamian.
Right, obviously.
It didn't have any thicker armor than normal Zaku's, yet it could take even beam blasters like a pro. So really, it was meant to be an altogether ultimate weapon against this newfound Zaku army. The prototype was then sent to Colony 7, Site 7.
Right.
Where it would find its supposed home to be beta tested and do all the final needed work before it was to be mass produced and all the different variations that we will see through the series. But it didn't get there on time. Since it didn't get there on time, the Federation actually first took it as a loss and decided to just use the data on the prototype to start building newer and more advanced versions of the RX-78-2, which would take time. And at first, they didn't know exactly what to do until they heard the White Base escaped from Site 7 and realized that, oh boy, they had their scapegoat. By putting all their hopes and dashes and fear into White Base surviving, which, to be fair, they never really cared. To their end, they wanted Zeon to think that their only hope was that one prototype.
Right.
But according to things that we learned later, it was basically just supposed to be a giant smoke screen. so they're able to get away with what they really wanted, and they also mass produce it and create new ways. So we see the white base escape. Their first directory is to find a place they can regroup and, actually be able to survive the war, which they find is not exactly easy.
Right.
Especially because they're pretty much surrounded by Zeon troops at the time. Once he got there, of course, then you have Char had already obtained the location of the possible prototype drop and realized that he was pretty much there. He was going to be able to get it, which is what he wanted. So they attack Site 7. Once Site 7 is attacked, they immediately go. They were supposed to first scout it out pretty much for the location of the ship, but instead a couple soldiers decide that maybe if it isn't here, I can just destroy it and that's it. One of the biggest misconceptions of the show, at least in the beginning, is that of course no one knew how the prototype looked like. So the Zeon soldiers assumed that a normal GM suit, which to me was kind of stupid. I feel like they would know what a GM suit would look like, was actually the new Gundam prototype. And they destroyed pretty much all the other suits that were operational there, except for a gun tank and a gun cannon. That would later also board the ship along with the Gundam. So Amuro had ample time to pretty much go and pick up the suit, learn from it, learn how to use it. He was able to defend the colony by destroying it.
Right.
Not exactly the best ideas, but I take it to the fact that he's a kid. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he tried his best. There was no way he could have known that hitting it in the middle would have destroyed the nuclear engine in the ship, and it would have pretty much almost killed everyone. To that end, he was able to board White Base. You had all these survivors. You had his friend Fabo, who was there with him, kind of like emotional support. She had lost her parents. A lot of people don't mention this enough, I think, but Fabo really grew up fast in that series. Yeah. She went from mourning the death of her parents in literally one episode to working as the pseudo mother of the new children that had boarded the ship. And kind of just being emotional support for the rest of the crew.
Yeah.
I mean, she was always there to protect Amuro whenever shit gets bad, but she was also there to slap him back into reality.
Yeah, I remember that a few times, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have Ryuk Chuji, who's the number one chunk boy of the Federation.
Yes, you know all about the number one chunk boy of the Federation.
He gave up his life, I believe, in the most honorable way through the series. He was. No one talks about enough about how this rookie recruit literally, pretty much saved the entire ship halfway through the series.
Right.
There was no reason someone like him should have such dedication to the ship and the Federation as there was, and that was the biggest wake up call to the entire Gundam crew in White Base. When he died in the battle in the desert, it was probably the realization to Amuro that even though he had been now for quite a while bitching about having to pilot the Gundam and everything else that came with it, he really isn't the only one sacrificing everything.
Right, of course.
And I think that's what motivated him to become a better pilot, eventually really becoming the backbone of the entire group and wanting to be better for not only himself, but to save the rest of his friends that were in it. So then you have Amuro, who was a very inspirational captain. All his men believed in him. They loved him because he was seen not only before Zeon, but after Zeon, as a very dedicated captain. He was during the Battle of Loom. He was someone who very critically attacked Zeon, even him as being part of it, for using gas on the colonies and dropping them and all that stuff.
Right.
he always built himself as a, you know, superior moral character. So you thought that would be something that would play a bigger part, but I kind of feel like they kind of left it behind. Or so then we move on, and then we have Garna. I'm pretty sure Garna came first. I might be wrong, but
Garma's death came first.
Yeah, so Garma's death pretty much was a turning point for Char, because at that point he got in his first taste of revenge. Kind of. I mean, he got pretty kill happy during Origin, so it wasn't his first taste, but
right, of course.
The realization that all this work that he had pushed through to get revenge wasn't solving his emotional problem. He still felt empty. He felt like there's nothing that he was gaining from killing all these people, specifically the Savvy family, which really angered him because he worked this entire time to get a step up to be able to kill these people. And now that he had killed the youngest son of the Savvy family, all he had did was embolden them to become stronger.
Right, of course.
So after realizing that, he kind of like left for a little bit. Well, he had to hide because at that point he was already being reprimanded for stuff that he did again during Origin, and he was pretty much left to Garma as pretty much a servant type of guy. But Garma had too much pride to just let Char act as a subordinate. That's why he viewed Char as a equal. It wasn't necessarily out of respect, but it was partly because of respect. But it was also about the fact that he had so much pride that he knew that Char was such a better soldier than him that he couldn't gain satisfaction from just treating him like a servant. That's why even though he by all means could have done it, he always treated Char as an equal, which is the irony of the whole thing, because Char always loved Garma as just a lowly life form that needed to be killed along with the rest of the family.
Right, of course.
So that was a bittersweet pill to swallow for Garma at the end, when he realized that Char never for a minute viewed him as a true friend. And by the time he realized it was too late. You had him dying in one of the first big battles that the Gundam had in Earth. And that was the start of the slow... It was the start of two things. Both Char realizing that revenge wasn't going to solve his problems, and Amuro realizing that all this killing is starting to get to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty drawn out, especially during the announcements of Gardner's death. Ironically, also the drop-off point for the captain of ADMS Team to Earth. Fun fact. When you see the whole colony speech, where this is very important to what I said about Origin, about pretty much how Nazi idealism fed into at least Geno Wasabi, or Gino Wasabi. Really. He wanted the authority to rule Zeon in the same way Hitler did the Nazis, and that's why he structured a lot of Zeon in the same way as Nazis.
Right.
And that entire speech, if I swear that if you put that speech and you put in the speech that Hitler did, it literally takes point by point everything that you can think of, right? It's meant to act not only as to bring fear to the Federation, but bring fear to the viewer. How this psychopath person is pretty much now bringing all this support to himself from all this group. So after the speech, Zeon is emboldened. They start mass producing newer, more advanced types of suits, and you see the suits such as the Dom being now produced, and what would be the Calicoos and Zaku 3s, which you wouldn't see at the end of the show, unfortunately. You would see them later in OVAs and in other series, but the point is, a lot of productions were made at this time, and they would be introduced much later into the show. At this point, Amuro is soul searching onto what to do. He has a hard time realizing that he needs to stay as a pilot of the Gundam because there's no one else that can really pilot it like him, which works two ways for him. He both gains an ego of like, I'm the only one that can pilot this, and fuck you if you want to give me orders. And at the same time, he also is like, why do I have to be the only one to fight? Which he really wasn't, because they eventually did start throwing the gun tank and gun canyon into the fight. But the problem is they couldn't solve anything. They were there as stalls for when the Gundam get out and actually started solving everybody's problem. And so then we move on to them heading up to the base in Earth, in the
Jaburo.
South Asian Sea colony, Jaburo. And once they start heading that way, they slowly get support thanks to this military captain.
Miss Matilda?
Matilda, there we go. Miss Matilda, who becomes, ironically, Amuro's first great love. At least it's described. Right? Ironically, one of the most important persons in Amuro's period of war, pretty much, again. She starts building support, starts giving them schematics and other weapons to support Gundam. By the way, quick throw in here, this entire part of the story of them bringing it in, and I believe even Matilda being there, was all an idea from pretty much the Gundam creator to let themselves introduce some stuff that Bandai wanted for toy sales, and in exchange, he got to put in another story to help Amuro grow up, which is Matilda's death,
right?
Pretty much. Bandai wasn't too happy about that, because he pretty much introduced a character that would die pretty soon into the series.
Yes,
and you have the introduction of Sayla going out into the fighter using the G fighter, and realizing that she was also a very good pilot. And the reasoning here that kept being brought up is because they might be new types. And that's where the show slowly starts to throw it more at your face that new types might be a thing. These kids might be new types. And they just have some kind of weird talent for this.
Right.
Which, I mean, like, say what you will about Sayla as a pilot. The fact that she was able to actually get the Gundam to move, even if she wasn't able to win, in the short amount of time that she did, when she went out to fight with it, tells you a lot of what new types can do with very little knowledge.
Right, of course.
About those stuff. But anyways, so during that battle, heading to Abalaku, they end up finding the Doms that were sent in there by the matriarch of the Zeon family, who pretty much wanted to use it as an opportunity to test them and also to try to slow down the movements of White Base. Because at the time, they also didn't really want to destroy White Base. They kind of wanted to let it go, just because they felt like the Federation was wasting a lot of time supporting White Base instead of building up their forces, which was true and not. The whole point is, ironically, that the Federation wanted Zeon to think that they were putting a lot of help in the White Base where they really weren't. As a matter of fact, once they got to the base in the mountain, they had a very shocking realization that the military cares so little for them that they literally told them, hey, if you want to leave, that's fine. We're just going to put you in a military prison for like a year or two, or however long the war takes to be over. Or you can just follow our orders absolutely, even if we fucking lead you to a suicide mission. And, you know, you get to die, or you get to not be free. You pick one. They didn't realize the importance of White Base at that point, considering that it would be literally the turning factor to the final fight in the series. But yes, Amuro managed to not only grow up even more while being in the base after realizing that Ryogu wouldn't get the proper promotion that he deserved after dying in the battle. and also realizing that every one of them was pretty much forced to be in a battlefield, and that the orphans would be sent to God knows where just to get them out of the way so they can continue fighting. After realizing all of that, he really grew up even more and started despising the Federation to a certain extent, but nowhere near the point of trying to betray the Federation. It was just basically him just acting out towards them. And I think that was one of his downfalls, because the Federation caught on to that pretty fast. And after the war, that's kind of what led them to be like, we can't have you free, man. We need you to stay prisoner, period. Just stay there. Don't move. Don't go anywhere. And, work with us. So then we see him meet Matilda's
fiance,
and that turns to kind of show him like what soldiers are willing to sacrifice for protecting their own, and that kind of drives him into the right, if you want to say the right side. I mean, I wouldn't call the Federation necessarily the good side in there, but for his purposes and for his friends, it was the best option. So you see them finally leaving the base in the South Asian Sea and then heading back to space. And at the time, before that, I kind of skipped over another point, which was, of course, one of the major grown-up moments for Kai, and that's him finding a girl that he liked, and then she turning out to be a spy for Zeon and Char, who had just come back into being in the forces. You saw the development of amphibious mobile suits that were to be used in Earth water and were pretty agile there. And you saw that the Gundam wasn't indestructible, that it could be destroyed, and that Amuro needed to be more careful with how to use it. It also started to the point that Amuro was starting to realize that the Gundam was starting to slow down for him, which is actually more of him just being too fast for the Gundam's actions. All these points would come to a head once they reached space, where they left. A lot of them having gone through events that helped them grow up a little bit more, and also gaining a new pilot along.
Oh yeah, the best bro.
The best bro. This man could have cocked Bright Noah so hard, and to be fair, he would have, but unfortunately, he didn't make it.
Right, but I mean, that was the whole point of the best bro. We knew he wasn't gonna make it, but he showed the entirety of the crew what it meant to be a bro.
Yes, and he was American because he laid down the law. So actually, I believe he was American. I could be wrong about that, but his nationality should be American.
Right, of course.
So basically, you have them going into space. They have a brand new pilot that would pilot one of the G fighters. I believe he was also piloting a different version of the G Defender at the time.
Okay.
And when they were in space, they were supposed to meet up with a larger force that would do the final battle in about Ku. But before they would head to a fortress that was headed by Dom Sabi and his new prototype mobile suit, or I believe it's called Big Sam. Big Sam. They reached the after being chased by Char quite a bit. Char starts suspecting that Sayla is involved in the fighting somehow. He tries to tell her to get out of there. And you have the first encounter between Amuro and what would be his second great love. An encounter without any real talk. It was just basically just the fact that they felt each other connecting.
Right, yeah, him and Lala, definitely.
And Lala definitely felt like he was someone that she was supposed to meet a long time ago.
Right, of course.
And that made her curiosity pretty big. Big enough to be able to disobey Char multiple times after the first meetup. You have, of course, then afterwards the battle, the duel in Texas, where they both go to the Texas colony, which is another colony that was pretty much ravaged and destroyed
fun fact, this was the colony where Sayla grew in her final high school years before entering college, and it seems to have been one of the colonies that was gassed towards the end of the war because there was absolutely no survivors, and the colony was completely abandoned.
Right, of course.
It's sad. I mean, one of the founding members was Sayla's pseudo-father, so... But whatever. Moving on. After the duel, Char realized that Amuro had become more than just a normal challenge for him. He is slowly starting to outclass. But yes, Lala was being changed by Amuro as well. And Char didn't realize to what degree that was until they started encountering them in space more and more. Then they had the breakout fighting between the Zeon space group and the colonies. And during that time, we also see that the Zeon have been working on what was basically the equivalent of I'm firing my laser cannon.
All right, yeah, I'm firing my laser.
That worked with a solar array system. And at the time, Savi took it as an opportunity to pretty much kill his father and take control of the Savi family, which he did. He also destroyed a heavy amount of Federation. And at that point, a whole breakout fight happened between Char's group and White Base, along with the rest of the remnants of Zeon and the Federation. Eventually, that leads to Char almost killing Sayla, and Amuro, at that point, accidentally killing Lala, who was trying to defend Char. She had been torn, realizing that Amuro was supposed to be her soulmate, but that she still loved Char too.
Right.
And she wanted to give up her life for Char at the very least, her saving. So then we have to the great loss. That would not be something that Amuro would forget for a long time. Amuro was traumatized. The only reason why he continued the fight at all was because he knew his friends needed him and he needed to be there for them. But this battle pretty much destroyed his confidence and made him pretty much, it clipped his wings. He no longer wanted to go to space after this. And if you think carefully about his words afterwards, you realize that wasn't something that he even promised himself. That he wanted to just be free from it all. Right? He thought that once the Gundam was destroyed, that would free him from the curse of war.
How wrong he was.
Yeah? So then you see, of course, the last major battle. Shinoa Savi ends up getting killed by his sister, who now has full control of the entire Zeon forces, believing that retreating Aboraku would be the best chance for her to survive and pretty much keep ruling Zeon. He sets up everything as a last-ditch effort while at the same time preparing to escape the base after another captain surrenders to the Federation.
Right.
In the middle of the whole thing, you have her also giving Char the ability to pilot the Neon Zeon, which kind of feels like it was named very poorly. But anyways, Neon Zeon wasn't even complete. It was missing its legs. But it was supposed to be literally a movable fortress. So then you have the final battle between White Base, Abalaku, and the Gundam and the Neon Zeon. The Gundam did incredibly well in this battle, even though, one, it was well beyond its capabilities throughout the entire fight. Two, it pretty much had little patches and pieces helping it stay together towards the end. And if you think about it, this is the reason why the Gundam Alexa was supposedly built, to give Amuro a more chunkier boy to work with during the final fights, but it was never delivered for him. Of course, this will be talked about in the OVAs. Now, to final battle, Char and Amuro, they are just head-to-head until the very last second, where Amuro managed to destroy the Neon Zeon's body, thinking that Char was in the cockpit in the middle. She wasn't. He was actually in the head cockpit. And Char, using his last blast to destroy Amuro's head, him having no cameras, having to use his new type sense, decides to program movement to the Gundam, and Char also deciding to escape at the last minute after shooting its final blast. They end up heading face to face and destroying both the Gundam and Zeon for good. Char and Amuro both escape into the deeps of Zaku, where they both fight it out, old school style. Well, for the most part. Mostly guns, rocket launchers, and then a couple swords for good measure. But as we can see from the future, from Origin, Char knew how to definitely talk a sword. Thanks to Sayla appearing at the last minute and pretty much tell them to stop being fuckfaces. She also gives them into the realization that they're both responsible for Lala's death, and that they need to do something to help prevent more deaths like her in order to atone for their mistakes. At that point, after, I guess, a long track of thought from Char, he realizes that maybe his revenge wasn't exactly the thing that he wanted, but it was pretty justified in the view of justice, so fuck it, let's kill the last one. So he grabs the rocket launcher and heads right on to defeat the final Savian family. And I know she's not the final one, but for the purpose of the story, she is.
Right, yes.
And at the same time, you see Amuro, for some reason, deciding to tell Sayla to go on her own back to the ship and that he'll do something instead of going with Sayla like he should have. But technically, they got separated, so you can see how it makes sense. Whatever. Anyway. So, Sayla somehow manages to get back to the ship faster than Amuro, which to a certain degree makes no sense. But
yeah, of course, that makes no sense.
You have the crew of White Base slowly realizing, by some weird voice in their head, turns out it's Amuro and Lala. Lala helping Amuro tell everybody that they need to get the heck out of there because it's about to blow up.
Right.
And so then you have Amuro describing the way to exit to all the crew members of White Base. That was a very special moment because you saw what being a new type can lead up to saving so many lives at once. So then you have them all escaping. Amuro gets to the core fighter. And by the way, again, I will say this 100 times. If you're watching this scene, please, for the love of God, watch the movie and scene instead. It's not much different than what you get from the anime, but the goddamn music makes a hell of a difference.
Of course.
Right. So this scene is one of the most iconic scenes in Gundam. Every time I see it, I always see the movie version because it just works. And of course, then you see Amuro going back with the rest of the group of friends, and him pretty much talking to Lala, saying that he feels sorry that he's the one to come back to the world of the living with family that's waiting for him, and she's dead and everything else. Char, as far as we know, is gone. The show tries to insinuate that him pretty much decapitating the last Zeon family member pretty much ended up with him getting killed by the explosion, but it's kind of left to your own interpretation. The show really does work as a standalone show. If you wanted to watch Gundam and watch that, it would be enough to satisfy you, I believe. But if you wanted to go deeper, it definitely does it to you too.
Right.
If you want more with the story, it is the best starting point out of any series I can think of.
Even,
of course,
even a better starting point than Origins?
I would say that Origins now is a better starting point, but I would say that Gundam doesn't lose its factor. I think that Gundam still, on its own, if you wanted to watch it, that starting point works. Now, of course, Origin gives you a lot more context, and I would always tell you, go for Origin first. But Gundam does not stop being one of the most relevant animes to our age.
Right.
Gundam existing is what led to animes that we have now, with plots that were way more complicated, more adult-like, and just the simple fact that it managed to put a staple into society of what we can expect from anime should say how great the series was.
Right. All right. Well, guys, we're gonna just wrap it up here, and stay tuned as well for the OVA special, where we cover the 3 OVAs that encompass what happens during the timeline of Gundam, and what happens a little bit afterwards.
Well, we're signing out now.
Alrighty,
Fun
well,
one.
this is Gundam taking off.